Anyway, it's 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, and we have some beautiful offerings, beautiful offerings inspired by Psalm 19. So why don't we start with Dean? Let me share the screen. Dean once again wows us with what she offers. All right, view full screen. Dean, I have both the full screen and then we have a little detail here. So Dean, would you like to tell us about your offering? Dean, I know you're here.
Really good.
Dean, I think you muted yourself, and you're muted now. I think you muted and then unmuted.
Okay. So
Good. Got it. Okay.
Thank you. All right. So if you go to the outer border of where the where our 8 copper nails are, you can see the universe, the cosmos of the night sky. And, that's really, if this was a close-up, you could really see it. And then you see the sun like a groom leaps across. And so those are the circular movements in gold of the sun literally leaping across, which is part of what, Rabbi, you called the first kind of arc of the poem. So following into that, we go into your light, your word, gold threads interplaning. They talked about honeycombs, a number of the authors in their translation, so that the gold line that forms the rectangle at the edge of the page is the gold line is, there's a line of light, which is literally like a luminescent yellow. And then the gold threads coming off it are the gestures towards Torah writing. So it's the gestures towards Hebrew writing without making a full letter. So it would be actually the gesture of the scribe of the arm. And that forms the gold threads that encompass the line of light going around the line. And then we have the human condition and the human chaos. But what I have here are actually, it's 21 drawn matches in the center, moving up. The 21th, of course, is our speaker, but it's about his struggle or her struggle as, paying attention to the third arc where people talked about their struggle to write himself and to make sure that he stays with the truth. So you can follow his kind of trying to rise, and then he makes it to upright. And then if we go to the detail, if you want to see it, the golden threads of Torah are encompassing him.
And this is burnt much more completely around the edges, isn't it?
It's black. Actually, it's a thin line of fire. That was really tricky, literally to catch the edge of the paper without it going into the paper, so that paper is complete on that one. But then there's the internal fires, which is, represents our human condition and our little battles and our rising, our falling, our death, our rising, our falling, our death.
Wow. Dean, you are just so creative. I would love to see the inside of that brain of yours.
I don't know about that, but I have loved these in the sense that you can see the layers that usually are Cindy can talk about this, or others, the artists and thing can talk about the layering that happens in an artistic process. But I wanted you to know this is a really close reading of the Psalms.
Really close reading. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dean. I love it. And thanks for giving us the close-up of the of that match.
Sherry.
I feel like this has really changed my relationship to matches too, Dean.
And string.
And it's wonderful. Yep.
Sherry?
So, yeah, I'm here.
Speak to us.
Okay. For you, after Psalm 19, the ocean spoke when we were 16 years. Breakers cheered us on. marvel in the sky, see clouds kiss. We watched footprints disappear in awe of coming tides, hands held alive. You breathed sun's heat by day and into night. Your chuppah's shade reached the edge of my earth. Your notes were rhapsodies, your silence light. You brought me daffodils and childbirth. But how can we retrieve a skipped caress? Forgive the stony glare, the harshest word. Washed clean with trust, we grope our way to yes. Yes, listen when lips part so hearts are heard. Your meditations are your words are meditations for my heart. Released at peace, souls joined will never part.
Wow.
Wow, Sherry. Speak to us.
Well, as soon as we started reading Psalm 19 and went through the 3 arcs, I saw Psalm 19 as a love poem to the divine, and it took the perfect form of a Shakespearean sonnet. And for those of you who don't know, Shakespearean sonnets have 3 quatrains, 4-line stanzas with end rhymes, and then a couplet, a 2-line coda at the end, and each line has 10 syllables, usually iambic pentameter, da-da, 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 da-da. And as with Psalm 19, For You has 3 major sections. The first section, the opening stanza, uses images from the natural world's declarations, like those of the Psalm, sky, sea, to express the awe in awakening love. And then the second stanza describes the rejoicing beloved, using Psalm's imagery of the bridegroom, heat, canopy, day, night, words, silence, edge, eye, earth, and all bringing gifts of love and hopefully wisdom. And then in sonnets, the third stanza in a Shakespearean sonnet is usually called the volta, and it introduces a new twist or a complication. And the third stanza in For You merges the volta of the third section of the psalm with our mistakes, our faults, and the inevitable flaws that exist in, well, any relationship, I think, as well as the possibility of resolution and healing through trust and effort. And then the final couplet of the sonnet, like the psalm's coda prayer, reflects the same meditations of my heart and the faith that love, like divinity, can be eternal. And that's sort of it.
Spectacular. Spectacular, Sherry. This takes my breath away. And that you were able to see this original psalm and then go here is so moving. I just love this. And I love the arc, and I love the use by you're using the, I studied Shakespearean sonnets, in school, haven't thought a lot about them since. So this is really profound. Beautiful, beautiful.
The way you analyzed it in the class, it just clicked. It just fit. And it is really a love poem.
And we grope our way to yes, both as a relationship, as a love poem to God, right? And also a relational one for human beings of all kinds of relationships, right?
Right.
We grope our way to yes. That's the best we can do.
That's what we do.
The best we can do. With all of the history and with all of the hurt, we grope our way to yes. That really sums up the relationship with God beautifully, I think, and really deep, and also the human relationships. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sherry.
Sherry, thank you.
Thank you
For that explanation.
You're welcome.
Judy Frank will be reading tomorrow. And we have Michael Goldstein.
Here I am. This is a free interpretation based on Rabbi Kleinbaum's encouragement for us to express what it means to us. So I did depart a little bit, and I'll discuss it later. The sky is the abode of the good. Both light and darkness encompass the earth. The good is the light, and there is nowhere to hide from it, strong in its orbit to the edge of night. The teaching of the good is pure, refreshing the soul, enduring and clear, direct and joyous. The awe of the good is pure, lasting forever. Good judgment is revered as the true, more coveted than pure gold, sweeter than honey. Even slaves are taught that good judgments heeded are beneficial. Humans make errors. Absolve me from mistakes not known. Stop me from doing things in darkness. Don't let them dominate me. Only then will I be fully realized and released from error. Please countenance my heartfelt prayer to your goodness, my foundation and my savior.
Mm, beautiful, Michael. Tell us about writing this.
Well,
I love
first,
watching your continued use of good as a reference to the divine. So I love watching this, you develop it. Speak to us, Michael.
thank you. First, I just want to jump to the use of the word bridegroom. It really upset me because we're gay and lesbian in this psalm class, and the word bridegroom
Well,
is
Michael, we're actually a lot of different things in the Psalms class, but you are gay. So from your perspective as a gay man, but we have many, many different sexual orientations and gender identities in the Psalms class. But
thank you.
it's totally fine for you to say from your personal experience as a gay man, you felt,
The word
uh,
bridegroom was
right,
was not so meaningful to me or
perfect.
to the lesbians in the group, because does a lesbian think of herself as a bridegroom or
Well, I think some might, but I think it's best for you to speak for yourself. I think that's
right,
the power of writing a personal poem is going into where it is. But I think for some lesbians, yep, they probably would use the word bridegroom. So
right.
so let's leave. But your experience is authentic and real, and you don't need to you don't need other people to justify whatever your personal experience of the psalm is.
And that's why I left that reference out of it, and I just used
Okay.
the words strong in its orbit is the edge of night, to the edge
Uh-huh.
of night. That was my way of dealing with the bridegroom and the tent and the power and all that, was just
Okay.
references. I also felt that this psalm was a prayer from the poet to us as human beings, and that's why I ended by by a personal plea. Absolve me from mistakes not known. Stop me from doing things in darkness. Don't let them dominate me. In other words, it's an appeal to the good to be over and above everything else.
Uh-huh.
That's why it's my foundation and my savior.
Beautiful. So yep, keep going.
That was really what I did. Only then will I be fully realized and released from error. In other words, through my belief in the good.
Yep. I think that really captures it beautifully, Michael, and I love it. And I think your response, excuse me, your response to the bridegroom issue brings out a very classical problem we have in encountering ancient texts or texts that are culturally outside of our personal experience. How do you deal with the problematic piece that comes up? And you can do exactly what you did, which is to simply excise it from the text. And when we were doing the CBST door, for instance, we had to confront certain images that we didn't feel were meaningful. And one question is, when do you excise it? When do you just say, we're moving on from this image, which, by the way, has been done throughout Jewish history, by the way, and certainly in the modern period by all different types of communities. So, for instance, if you go to a Reform movement's prayer book, they remove any reference. To the Reconstructionist movement, they remove references to chosenness. If you go to a Reform movement Siddur, they remove references to the Messiah. So just kind of removing things that are problematic is absolutely one approach. And another approach is trying to find a new interpretation. But both of those are legitimate. And I hear from you, Michael, such anger or such really alienation from it that you couldn't even work on rethinking it. You just needed to excise it. Totally legitimate. And then I really love your use of the teaching of the good. So that, and that contrast with the goodness that you've identified in the universe is so powerful. And then you say, but guess what? Humans make errors. So I think you've really captured the tension that exists in the psalm of there's some kind of perfection in the universe, but we human beings, we're so far from perfect. And so then it becomes the prayer that you've described here. Really beautiful. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Marilyn Michon is next. Marilyn.
Okay. I open my eyes each day to the wonders of your earth. The birds fly overhead in perfect formation. The waves of the ocean with white caps like puffs of cotton. The wind and the rain blow with your voice, Adonai, a reminder of your glorious and thundering presence. Making the sun rise and set in all its majesty, you are truly miraculous. And yet my tears fall. Could that also be the glory of your creation? Your world is the home I can never lose. I am also one of your creations, rising in the morning in joy and resting at night under your heavens above, knowing that I'll soar tomorrow.
Beautiful, Marilyn. Speak to us. Tell us about writing this from Psalm 19.
Well, as we were going over the psalm, I was looking out over the ocean where I'm living now, and I noticed these birds flying in perfect formation. And of course, the ocean is right there and the white caps. And we had some thunderstorm. I mean, all that week, that same week when we started doing this psalm, it just spoke to me, just the nature right outside the window. And of course, I'm going through, trying to establish a home of my own, on my own. And well, the world is the home that God has created for me.
Beautiful.
So that's the whole thing, the personal struggle. And then in the world that's miraculous, I'm still struggling in my own way. And that's the story.
So beautiful, Marilyn. And I really love the verse you put in here about describing the glory of the universe, all the things that are so beautiful, and yet my tears fall. It doesn't, you know what, guess what? We're human beings. And we can at the same time hold multiple profound truths, right? The universe is beautiful. The oceans are magnificent. The birds are inspiring, and we have a beautiful I-thou relationship with the universe. And you know what? I still feel miserable.
Right. Sometimes.
Sometimes I still feel terrible. It's not enough.
Right.
And that's human. That is human.
Right.
And to be able to do both, Marilyn, that speaks to the, strength of your soul, that you could kind of through your tears say, you know what, the ocean is beautiful, but I still feel terrible. I love it. I really love it. I think it expresses the truth many of us feel. You know what? I can see the beautiful spring emerging, but I still feel terrible. Yep, it's true.
But I'm trying to also see my own process as part of God's
yes, I see that
as well.
Right.
That
the tears and suffering is also part of the universe. Yeah, beautiful.
That's right.
And is connected to those birds in formation in the cotton white ocean. Yeah, that's a beautiful twist on it, Marilyn.
Yes.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you so much. Donna Gray.
If I were a star twinkling in the night sky among a myriad of other twinkling stars, I wouldn't worry about the light years I had to travel before my glow could be seen, long after I had ceased to exist. I would just twinkle, secure in my God-given place in the universe. Long ago on a retreat, late at night when everyone else was asleep, I popped a cassette tape into my amazing Sony Walkman, plugged in headphones, and offered myself a private transfusion of soul-reviving music that sounded so astonishingly good. Energized and wide awake, I walked back and forth across the darkness of an open field, illuminated by so many twinkling stars that no longer existed. Gazing up at them, empowered by the soundtrack and the night air, I felt the exhilaration of being at one with the universe. I was high on God. How many times in my years since have I had a similar experience? Not many, although sometimes almost. I had been blessed with an elusive taste of the possible, impossible to forget. Perpetual seeker, I have walked down different paths with their alternate routes to the promised land, each path offering its own kernel of wisdom to absorb. How enlightened I would be if only I could live up to it all. Alas, I am a human being full of blind spots and foibles. I reach for the stars and then fall back down to earth again and again. May I have mercy on myself and know that God is always there when I open my eyes. May I have compassion when my reach exceeds my grasp and extend that compassion to others. May I continue to strive, no matter how small or short-lived my successes may be. May I find the heavens in everyday acts of simple kindness and know in my bones that is more than enough. And this I pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Shekhinah, my rock and my redeemer.
Donna, you do such a spectacular job. I mean, this is the human being you are, of carrying so many things at once and honoring them. So speak to us about writing this.
You know, I usually think I can't do it, and I think, oh, you know, maybe I'll skip this one. And then, you know, like I just, the mention of the stars, just, you know, I don't know how I thought if I were a star twinkling that, I don't know where that came from. But you know, it reminded me of like that peak experience that I had where I had a God experience that, you know, I had stopped smoking pot. This is like about 40 years ago. And I saw that I could get high on God, but but it, you know, but the thing is that, you know, it's, you know, there's a part of me that wants to reach for the peak experiences, but if the peak experience were all the time, they wouldn't be peak experiences any longer.
Yep. Isn't that the intrinsic problem with life, right?
And, you know, I'm somebody who, like, I've been, you know, I called myself a spiritual shopper, you know, when I had to write a spiritual biography in the B'nai Mitzvah class. And, you know, I've done so many things. It's, you know, it's, and they're all interesting and give me a little piece here and there. But, you know, but then, you know, the work is inside of me. And, you know, like you can't just absorb it by osmosis. You have to walk the walk, and it's not always easy.
Yeah. Beautiful. And I think you speak for so many of us as, yeah, it's a hard road. And there are moments where we've had some deep reprieve and other moments where we're just saying, okay, we got to keep moving forward, you know, and being kind to ourselves and not being so judgy and holding ourselves in a way that we're always going to fail. We got to let go of that. Too many of us do that too often. And instead of saying, you know, these peak experiencers, these moments, God is there, that's going to have to give me what I need to continue.
And you know, and in the end, you know, may I find the heavens in everyday acts of simple kindness and know in my bones that that is more than enough.
Exactly. Beautiful. Really spectacular, Donna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Barbara Grindell.
Hello.
The heavens paint a radiant picture of your handiwork. Each dawn we awaken to a fireball. Each night we see sparkling stars twinkling as the moon lights up in the dark, distant sky. This is for me the greatest show on earth. It speaks to me, yet I do not hear an utterance. To the ends of the earth, this majesty plays out, to the ends of the world and back again, to see the light of the sizzling sun and feel its heat. Your principles are upright, the heart rejoices. Your instruction is radiant, lighting up the eyes. Your fear is pure, lasting forever, living righteously, more beneficial than gold, even refined gold. Who is like you, majestically working wonders? I am human, a mere mortal, and I make mistakes. Let me not obsess over those errors. Help me to let them go, to release those thoughts. May the words of my mouth, prayers of my heart be agreeable to you, my rock, my rescuer.
Beautiful, beautiful. Speak to us, Barbara. I'm so glad you wrote.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know. I think I have something like Donna. Should I skip this one? But I don't want to do that. I don't want to, because then I'll continue to, I want to continue to write. So, well, I do. I mean, this just came for me. I do think it's,
Barbara, just to say something about that, and I know the artists in the group will have different responses to this, but being creative is a discipline. It's actually what you say is correct, like doing it, making sure that there's a discipline to actually doing it is a good thing. And that's why I hope you do continue doing it. It doesn't mean every single piece you will ever write is going to be a gem that needs to be preserved for eternity, but it does, gets the muscles going. So thank you, Barbara, for doing it.
so I was going to say, it is the greatest show on earth to me. I very often go out and look at the stars. You know, there's a little too many lights in Boynton Beach. In Cape Cod, it's dark and you see all the stars. Amazing at night. And I always look at the moon. I look for the different phases of the moon. And I used to, zero in more on the full moon, but now it's like every phase is beautiful. So, and the differences too between the moon in Florida and the moon in New York, I realized that right away. It's an angle difference. Like a half moon is vertical in New York. It's horizontal in Florida. It's amazing. Check it out. Yeah, I saw that like as soon as I moved there, I said, wow, it's the same moon, but it doesn't look the same. So it does excite me. That was all true. And I also, of course, love the sun. I love going to the beach. I didn't put that in. I could have done that somewhere. And then, of course, radiant, lighting up the eyes. I look for those things in Psalms now. A word that then is defined in the next line. And I left out honey. I don't really like honey. I don't like to eat it, so I just let it go, like Michael. So, and just looking for certain words. You want to take a synonym that works for you. That's what I've been trying to do with the Psalms. What word can I use here? And I'm very familiar with who is like you, working, majestically. So that sort of came, but I had to change it a little bit. It's not exactly the way it is in the prayer book, and that was important to me. And then, of course, admitting you make mistakes, we all do, and where do we go with them, and how to let them go. And that's it. And also, of course, may I be acceptable, agreeable. See, I used agreeable instead of acceptable. So,
isn't it an enormous release, even just to say the words, I'm human, I make mistakes, let me not obsess over those errors, help me to let them go. So in other words, what can the prayer be? The prayer is not just what's beautiful about this, you're not just praying to be perfect or to be the aspirational. You're praying for the strength to be able to let mistakes go, which takes a lot of work. We all know that. It takes a lot of work, as referring back to Donna's, it takes a lot of work to stop beating ourselves up. And sometimes what we need God for is help to let go on the beating ourselves up, is to have the strength to release ourselves, to be able to see them, to accept them, to not deny it, to not say it didn't exist, that we did not to be able to both acknowledge, but also not condemn ourselves for a life sentence of guilt. That is a prayer. That's a profound prayer. That's an example of needing God's help.
I like the word release too. When I used it in class, I knew it was going to be in my psalm somewhere, and so there it is. And what I do also, I start to write, then I walk away, and then I come back, and what can I add to this? Do I still agree with this? And so, and it comes, and it's there. So
Beautiful.
I'm really happy that I did it. So thank you.
Beautiful.
Barbara, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Keep writing.
Thank you. Thank you.
We now have Dorina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
The prayer of my heart. It felt so strange to finally have a good day for a change amid all turmoil. But it was finally really spring outside. It wasn't even raining on my walk. The trees were coming wildly into bloom, hurrying to catch up. The green of all the young leaves was so tender. House martins flew above my head. Their voices were so sweet. The tadpoles in the pond were growing fast. In short, the whole of nature was rejoicing. And when I saw a Judas tree in bloom, I sang Sheheriano in the street, softly, so softly, barely audibly. For I had lived to see that sight again, and now my heart was full, and nothing was so scary anymore. It is not easy to finally compose a psalm of joy. It's easier to be the voice of grief, such is my nature. And grief has not been lacking in my life, but that makes any joy even more precious. It has to be acknowledged while it lasts and shared to warm my chosen people's hearts. I don't know how to write a psalm of praise. I don't know whom or what to praise exactly. I sometimes envy other people's faith. I know that I am not exactly Jewish, that I already failed at being a Christian, that I lost the ability to pray. So here it is, my rambling almost prayer, my silent Amidah, my song of love, my offering instead of ancient quotes to maybe something higher than myself, or just to you who took me in your temple and who sustained me in my grief and fear. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Oh, Dorina, this is spectacular. Can I tell you, I'm not sure I've ever read anything more Jewish than this. The doubt, the sense of sadness and wistfulness, and the sense of where do I authentically live? It is so deeply Jewish. Speak to us, Dorina. This is really spectacular.
Well, you know me already. I don't follow closely the sounds. I just vaguely take inspiration from them. And it's easier for me to relate to the immediate nature around me than the universe as a whole in this case. And things are bad here with the pandemic. Each time I log into Facebook, I know that I can read another piece of bad news. But still, I finally managed to find some joy in spring the way I did before. And I managed to write some of this poem during the silent Amidah time of last week's Friday night service. I partly owe that to Sam and Joyce. And I especially, Sam was singing with such feeling that night. And that's why I called it the prayer of my heart. And That's why I ended that way, not really with the Shema line, but with that line that echoes it.
It's a line of deep blessing.
Yes, and I wanted it to be reminiscent of the Shema
Yes.
without actually being the Shema.
This is really a spectacular piece of writing, which I think touches all of us, which is the power of great art, great writing, and it comes from such a deep place in your heart, Darina. We're so grateful to you for it. We can't wait to have you at CBST. It will happen.
Oh, speedy and nowadays.
Darina, such beautiful comments in chat. I will be sending you everything so that you can print them out and treasure them. Such a beautiful offering. Oh my God.
Yes, and I don't know how to write a psalm of praise. How powerful is that? Every line here is worthy of study, Darina. Really beautiful, spectacular writing.
Thank you for this so much.
Sustained me in my grief and fear. Maybe that's the best sometimes we can get, right? Again, another example of what we pray for, to be sustained in our grief and in our fear.
Wow. All right, we catch our breath. We move to Peter Klein.
Psalm 19, Lost for Days. After carnage, wandering off, never sleeping, never waking, haze drifting from killing fields, airborne rebuke, the stench of men, water's edge still walking if to drown, as sun breaks its millennial cave, illumination, your hand, your work, your unwritten texts printed on the waters, the salt air, bird cries, distant shores, floating peaks. If I could be literate, I would see what gifts remain. Truth be told, as told if my lips cannot reckon your ineffable words, then rinse my heart that I may waken clean.
One of the things so powerful I'm seeing this morning is the ability and the expression of prayers that are different than kind of the classical prayers. And this is exactly some of the place I'm so proud people are getting to. Sometimes what we pray for is not the perfect resolution into complete bliss, right? Sometimes what we're praying for, can you just go down, Harold? Can I just see down at the bottom? That I may awaken clean, then rinse my heart. I mean, that prayer to rinse my heart. Oh my goodness, such a beautiful, powerful prayer. It's very different than, make it all good, right? Rinse my heart. All right, go to, so Peter, speak to us. Beautiful.
I really wanted to write a prayer about gratefulness and happiness because when we were in Chavruta last week, I was just enveloped by this tremendous warmth of the psalm and the class and so forth. And then, a few days later, this came out. And it's like,
we are hard to predict, right?
Yeah. I mean, between Yom HaShoah, Yom HaAtzmaut, all of the desecrations around the world. I mean, and then carnage has two parts to it. There's the part that we think about in terms of pogroms and such, and we're reading that in the introduction to Tevye. But there's also what we do to ourselves, our bodies, our minds. And so this one is a kind of walking PTSD moment of trying to come back into yourself. The words don't line up properly. They're not coherent entirely. And yet it's coming out of that haze. And then it becomes clear only at the end. You just have to walk in this strange person's imagination, what they're seeing moment to moment to moment. So it's crazy where you start with 19, which is such an exalting psalm. And all I can say is this class is just so humbling and exhilarating at the same time. To be among you people, it's just a treasure.
I completely agree with that. And I think what you're saying is a really powerful thing, which is beautifully expressed here, which is every moment of life is different, right? So any moment you either read something or write something is a snapshot. And that's what I find, and I've said this a million times, so I hope I don't bore you. Part of, for me, the power of having had this relationship with the Psalms over so many years and in so many different moments of my life is that as you go through a Psalm, you can remember how you felt when you might have connected to it at a different time, but you're in a totally different place at this moment. So it's like what stays still are the actual words of the original Psalms, but we don't stay still. The world around us doesn't stay still. And so we're constantly refracting through the words of the Psalm, very, very different things at every moment. And Peter, your description is a great example of that. Thank you. Really, really beautiful.
Here's a person who's completely overwhelmed. The senses come in, but slowly trying to read the world as it exists and come to some sanity there. And I think it's a very humbling prayer, and one that's nurtured by nature.
I do too. And it also includes exactly what you felt when you initially responded, which is the gratitude from being in a community that's doing this. So you could have that as well. That doesn't go away.
All right, 2 more for today, Lori, and then Jeremy.
I'm wondering if we should, for time, maybe we should hold Jeremy to tomorrow, Harold?
Right. If you can just,
is that okay?
Okay, Jeremy and Annika, if you could just chat as to whether Jeremy.
Would that work? I just don't want to squish it.
No, we're checking right now.
Okay, great. Okay.
Right now. And so let's have Lori.
Okay, so timing is everything. And I wrote this right around the time of my sister's memorial.
Beautiful. That's so meaningful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she died right when we started this, and the memorial.
I feel like we've been with you this year, Lori. So that's
you have. Oh my God, I don't know what I would have done without this. So this is what I wrote. To the scribe, a string of wordless words, the sympathy cards that lament, words cannot express, the valentines that proclaim, words cannot express, the birthday cards that promise, words cannot express, songs of friendship sung around the campfire, the Saturday morning prayers uttered as the mist rise over the still lake, the solitary reading of a great piece of work, the howl of agony after a tragedy, the whisper, the plea, the promise, the pledge, all spoken, but never capturing the intensity of the moment, the dazzling beauty, the endless wave of grandeur that bursts out of the prison of the confined soul. I study great works looking for wisdom, searching for direction, yearning for clarity, hoping that perfection exists somewhere, that justice is attainable here on earth, that truth is within my grasp, believing that if I am good, then life will be good and fair and filled with comfort, love, hope, reward, forgetting to connect with the eternal moment that is always there when I remember to turn, that place where guilt and blame and remorse are irrelevant, that place of true acceptance, that a space of grounded being that touches my heart and expresses itself in a card without words.
Oh, expresses itself in a card without words. Speak to us, Lori.
So we finally, my really kind of messed up family finally put together a memorial for my sister. And I realized that, it's wonderful when people say things, when people send cards, when people try to comfort you, but it's really the being present to that moment. And you can't really I can't anyway, really put the experience of being present in words. When I try to put it in words, it evaporates or it feels less than. And I was struck in this psalm because they talk a lot about utterance, and even verse 4, they say, there is no utterance, there are no words. Now they say whose sound goes unheard, but I kind of took it as sounds and utterances. They don't really capture the hug, the physicality of what I needed to kind of come to the end of this mourning period. So That's what I wrote.
Yeah. And it's only a period. It's not the end of mourning. And you've gone through such a journey with your sister and her life and your life and her death. This is such a magnificent moment. And to be able to say what words cannot express, and then to try and get to that depth, looking for wisdom, searching for clarity, hopefully it doesn't exist. And so that's very, very, very powerful, Lori.
Thank you.
And what does exist is the human authentic expression of that moment. And you're not alone in feeling that. So that's what becomes so powerful, to have it down. The burst out of the prison of the confined soul. Really beautiful, Lori. And it's so moving that we've carried your sister with us this year, and your relationship with your sister.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
that is the offerings for today. Thank you so much to all of our authors. I read these this morning early as I put them all together, and I said to the rabbi, I said they were particularly beautiful.
Yes, very powerful.
So thank you. We'll be back tomorrow, starting with Jeremy, and read through the rest of them. And then, Rabbi, do we have confirmation on Thursday?
I haven't heard back from him. I'm going to reach out again today, but I assume it'll be happening. But let's wait. The author of the book, Simcha Weintraub, about the Bratslav Hasidim, he was going to join us, but I haven't heard back. But I'm hoping.
All right, and I did circulate the text for Psalm 20. We're up to the 20s. For those of us who want to get a little head start. All right, thank you, everybody. So tonight,